This is John Krysko, the host and producer of TheSilverHalideShow, and this is a running audio commentary for Stanley Kubrick's Killer's Kiss, released in 1955. Before I begin the commentary, I would like to say that this may seem a bizarre choice to some people, even to Kubrick fans, because Killer's Kiss isn't often considered amongst Kubrick's canon, shall we say. Some consider it amateurish, some consider it not close to his professional filmmaking techniques. However, I was fortunate enough to see Kubrick's films in chronological order as I discovered them, and so I saw Killer's Kiss first, and that led me to not watch it trying to see it as a Kubrick film or looking for those Kubrick notes that are often scattered throughout his later works. If anything, it's great to see this for the first time before seeing his films, or if anyone is listening and watching this, that it's perhaps worth a reconsideration. I've always loved the film. I don't pretend that it's a classic or a masterpiece. I would dare say I would rate it 6.5 out of 10, maybe 7 at the most. That's pushing it. Most people probably give it a 5 out of 10. However, I hope that by doing this commentary that I can speak a little about why I think it's a better film than it is generally seen as, and some of the many things I love about the film, and great little touches to look for. And so we have a Minotaur production. I'm watching this on the Criterion Blu-ray for The Killing. This copy of Killer's Kiss is included as an extra supplement. It's a beautiful print, and it's great to finally see it in all its glory like this, cleaned up and touched up, digital quality. I've never seen this in a cinema, only on television and videos like this. Anyhow, we open in the train station in the good old days of the mid-50s when you could smoke in the middle of a train station. You see the main character just standing, thinking, contemplating, nervously pacing back and forth. I'm going to be speaking much about Kubrick's transition from still photography to film cinematography, and many of the angles and techniques he uses throughout. And we're going to notice very quickly that the narration, which is typical of a film noir, although usually in a film noir it's done by a private detective or a policeman, in this case it's done by just a boxer, a regular Joe Schmo. And we also notice it's not really necessarily the hard-boiled type of dialogue we're used to in, Humphrey Bogart type narration and characters and stuff. But I love films of this era that start in a train station, because it's a setup of a transition, like the final act or the climax is going to happen, and yet it's going to go back in time to tell you everything leading up to the guy being in the train station. Here we have great cinema verite, documentary camera shots, stolen shots on the streets, just kind of acclimating us to the neighborhood and the environment. It's interesting to note that this is 1955 and Kubrick never made another film set in modern-day New York until Eyes Wide Shut in 1999. In some ways, this can kind of be seen as a very early, low-budget attempt at a type of Eyes Wide Shut film, but more on that later. And even though that may be a stretch. Perhaps hear me out before laughing. So Kubrick here is using a tripod. He hadn't gotten yet into using the dolly much. In fact, I don't think there's any dolly in this film, although it certainly becomes used in The Killing. But we're going to set up here on a great 180-degree pan on the tripod, showing off the boxer's crummy little apartment, very, very sparsely decorated with just sort of utilitarian stuff, chairs, dishes, fishbowl, and this. Here's a great photographer's type of experimental shot here. Character staring into the fishbowl, which gives it a fisheye type of view. And some would say the overt symbolism is that this boxer character is also living in a fishbowl. Perhaps a little heavy-handed. And again, I'm not going to maintain that this is one of the greatest scripts ever written, or some of the best dialogue ever said, or even some of the best acting. But again, I think it's a lovely little small film, and anyway, I'm going to stop talking about defending it. These are great shots of the boxing gym, guys working out in the background, and Davy's manager, and obviously a lot of Kubrick's familiarity with this scene and these type of characters came from his short film and Look magazine spread on Walter Cartier the boxer. A unique type of apartment where you would have windows facing each other only maybe 6, 8, 10 feet apart. But we notice very early on also that to think of this as a type of Hitchcock film where the character of Davy is the only voyeur is not. She's also staring at him through the window and thinking. So it's an equal mix of both of them stealing moments of looking at each other, studying behavior, perhaps fantasizing in some ways, or just thinking. But we get the impression these are lonely people, obviously. They live in very sparse, kind of drab apartments. I had no expectations going into seeing this film the first time. I mean, the cover, the poster of the VHS tape I rented was, a close-up of Davy's face with the mannequin hands hanging in the background with the title Killer's Kiss. I was expecting like a Dementia 13, Francis Ford Coppola, really early, kind of low-budget slasher, horror, killer flick or something. But very early I was noticing already here that this wasn't it. This was a mix of film noir, but also sort of a sentimental documentary verite look at everyday life in mid-50s New York for, sort of very low-income people. Love this high overhead shot over the stairway as they make their way out with Rapallo in the background in his fancy car. Notice Rapallo gives a really interesting eye look at Davy, and then Davy looks back, and you wonder whether Rapallo saw Davy looking back at him or not. Already we get the idea that Rapallo is, in his 50s with the white greasy hair and sort of pre-Ronald Reagan hair. With this 20-year-old dancer chick, and he's already jealous. We can tell he's a very jealous type. Sees even a guy walking next to her and assumes that she's cheating on him or interested in other guys. Great use of voiceover. I'm a firm believer in voiceover technique in film. I don't think it's lazy screenwriting. I actually think you can save a lot of screen time. And this is also good storytelling because we don't need to know more about this boxer character than the filmmaker feels we need to. And so we're not going to find out much about his family or his situation or his financial life. We just know that he has an uncle and an aunt out in Washington State who have a farm and some horses, and it seems like they're his only family, or at least some of the only people he's in touch with. And They want him to come out. But it's great because you can kill the time of the trip in the film, him taking the subway to this arena for the fight, and also get through this storytelling technique of giving his backstory, or at least some of his family setup. Okay, beautiful insert shots here, handheld, 16mm Airflex. A lot of this obviously was learned and perfected again in the day of the fight film short and the Look magazine spread on Walter Cartier, but obviously it's perhaps a little more glamorized or dramatized for Hollywood. And again, we have more exterior stolen shots of verite documentary techniques, sort of setting the scene. Kubrick would hardly ever do this, in his later films that were more professional, but it is very great for setting the scene of this time and this place, which is, a 50s that we don't really understand today, I don't think. A dance hall with what they call taxi dancers, or dancers where you pay by the dance for women just to dance with you at a club. Sort of, sailors and drifters and I guess alcoholics perhaps, gambler types, and, a few bouncer mafia types in the background. Actually, I lied. This is a dolly shot. So Kubrick does have a dolly shot in this film. So very early. And this, harkens back to the dance hall scene in Lolita, as well as Eyes Wide Shut. Kubrick was always fascinated with dance, movement, circular, rhythms. And again, also some of these shots can be kind of jarring that you wouldn't expect in a Kubrick film. This is not typically the kind of angle or shot that he would use, the one on Irene Kane there. And again, we have more of these insert shots on preparing the fighter. We get a sense of the intensity. It's very quiet. You can hear the crowd noise outside. It's ceremonial, ritual, covering all the aspects. Obviously, these are real trainers, and this is a real place, but this is an actor. But filmed very realistically, standing right beside him, so that you're there not just as an observer, but as a participant. You feel like you're right there. And so the upcoming fight was actually really filmed with 2 cameras. All the spectators were there. And it was funny doing some internet research just the other day. Some people were saying that it can rival, to some degree, the boxing scenes in Raging Bull. Or at least it's a grandfather to the boxing scenes in Raging Bull. Here we have a gorgeous example of Kubrick black and white photography as he turns off the lights in his office and is just lit by the television. We're going to have many, many scenes where characters are almost shown in a negative light, where everything around them is white and they will be in black, like in silhouette, or everything around them is in white and they're in black. It's an early use of television where you're actually showing what's going on in real time, and a character in a different place is actually watching it and seeing it, reacting to it. This was also kind of border pushing, I found, in my opinion, that, Rapallo would be so overtly kind of sexually turned on by boxing, fighting, this sort of, heterosexual rise he's getting out of it. Sort of the way a lot of people are with the MMA today and the gay fetish and that. But anyhow, Kubrick is going to use a technique of cross-cutting back and forth between the match and the TV, the reaction shots of Rapallo and the dancer. It's shot in such a way to make you feel a observer in the arena, so that you're oftentimes looking through the ropes, low angles